Hello, how you doing? Nice to see you again. This is my new video player. I'm calling it Playback Pro. This is not only a video player, this is also a video loop maker and video analysis tool. I got the idea to create this app originally from a need I had personally, which is often how I end up creating apps. Is I have a need for something, I have an idea based on some real world scenario of mine. And in this case, I wanted a tool for viewing my drone footage, because I have a lot of drone footage where I hover over a body of water for a long period of time, and I want to look back at that drone footage to spot movement. And you can only really do that by speeding up the video, by playing it back and forth at high speeds. And I was doing this by manually scrubbing the video back and forth and watching for movement in the footage. And I had the idea that I would rather automate this. I would rather be able to define loop points and have the video scrub automatically. And in fact, the original name I wanted to give to this thing is Auto Scrubber or Auto Scrub or something like that, Auto Scrub Player, but I figured people would have no idea what that means. So I decided to call it Playback Pro instead. Playback Pro Video Loop Maker, that was the title in the App Store. I figured that would get more ASO traffic than Auto Scrub Player because nobody would have any idea what Auto Scrub even means. Anyway, I digress. This video is about my new player, and I want to walk through some of the features and just explain to people how it works, and that's it. I'm going to keep it short. This isn't going to be too long. So I have my little checklist here that I'm going to go through as I go through this video. So I already described to you what Playback Pro is. It's a video player and a loop maker, and it's all designed to make all that easy. So it has all the basics you would expect from a video player. It has play, pause. You can play the video. So this video, I don't know if you've heard of Sora, but Sora is the video creation tool by OpenAI. And I just ripped one of the videos from the Sora website for demonstration purposes. So if you're wondering what this video is, that's what it is. It's from Sora, and it's pretty cool. Anyway, so this is a video player. You can hit play, the video plays, right? As you would expect. It has play, pause, and then it has forward and back. Well, actually what these buttons do, similar to the QuickTime player, what the forward and back buttons do is it changes the speed of the video, and if you have a loop selected, it changes the speed of the loop, okay? So it has real-time scrubbing, as you would expect from a video player. You just grab the yellow dot here, and you can scrub back and forth. Pretty schmeezy, I mean easy. So not only is Playback Pro a video player, it is also a video loop maker. So what you can do is, see, you have this timeline here, the video timeline. You can make this bigger and smaller, by the way. So along the video timeline, you can hold the command button and you get this little ghost marker. So hold command, and if you command click anywhere on the timeline, you can create the beginning of a loop, and then you hold command and click again to create the end of a loop. And you can create as many loops as you want along the timeline. So again, you command click once to create the beginning of the loop, command click again to create the end of a loop. You can also just press the M key to create a loop marker at the current scrub handle position. And what I mean by scrub handle, it's the yellow thing. So if you hit M, that will create the beginning of a loop. And then you can move the scrub bar again, and you hit M again, that will create the end of a loop. And of course, after adding loop markers, you can click them and drag to define the beginning and end of the loop. So let's say I want to make a loop of this portion of the video where it's depicting like a Wild West scene. I can do that, and it will loop back and forth. See? And that is the ping pong loop style. You can also do repeat. You can also make the loop repeat, and that is the repeat style. Like such. And the app has a pretty good keyboard integration, so you can use the arrow keys to move the loop markers back and forth. See, I'm using the arrow keys now to move the loop markers frame by frame, so it's a frame by frame movement. So you can really get precise on where you want the beginning and end of the loops to be. And that was the reasoning behind that. And you, as I said, you can create multiple loops, and then to Top right, you may have been wondering what this is. On the top right of the screen, you have what I'm calling the Loops Manager, and you can show and hide this thing by hitting the backslash key. So if you hit the backslash key, you can show and hide it using the backslash key. And it'll show you in a list here of all the loops that you have defined. So currently I have 2 loops defined, and you can select them just by clicking. You can also use the arrow keys to select individual markers. So if I press the down key, it selects the markers one by one. Most importantly, probably, here is the speed slider. So you can adjust the speed of a loop. You can adjust the speed from a range from 0.1x to 180x. So by default, the range is 0.1 to 10x, but there's this little, I call it the multiplier button on the left-hand side of the slider. So you can actually change the range of the slider by hitting this button, and it multiplies the range each time you click it. So the max is 16. So if you hit 16, the range is at its maximum, and you can go all the way to 160x with the range of the slider at its maximum. That's a little bit of an innovation of mine. I haven't really seen this in other apps, but I just wanted a way to change the range of the slider, because if you just have a fixed range, it kind of limits what you can do. So I came up with this multiplier idea. Hopefully it makes sense to people. So here's the loop playing at maximum speed. And I could talk to you a little bit about the audio of this app. So by default, it uses a very low quality, for real-time playback, it uses a pretty low quality algorithm to speed up and slow down the loops. So it doesn't sound great to the ear, but when you actually export a loop, the audio quality is much better. Anyway, and here is the loop at the slowest possible speed. Pretty slow. So if you want an alternative to using the sliders for adjusting the speed, you can also use the rewind and fast forward buttons, as I call them. I don't know, you can call them previous and next buttons, but so you can use these to adjust the speed in a more uniform fashion. It'll adjust by like increments instead of the slider, which is a more analog adjustment. So if you have a specific number in mind, like if you want to get to a round number, say you want exactly 5x, you can use the fast forward button to get to 5x. And also, as I mentioned earlier, there's 2 loop styles, and with the Loops Manager window open, you can change the loop style by hitting this button here. So right now the loop I have selected is repeat, and you can change it to ping pong just by hitting this button, and it changes the icon to indicate the loop style. So this is ping pong, goes back and forth, and repeat is, as you would expect, repeating. Goes from start to finish. Okay. You can also export loops with the Loops Manager window open. With the loop selected, you just hit the export button or the share button, and that will begin exporting this loop. Export is complete, and it saves it as a WebM file. So as I explained earlier, the audio of exported loops is different than it sounds in the real-time playback. So for sped up loops, it'll maintain the pitch, and slowed down loops, it'll also maintain the pitch, so it'll sound nicer. However, there's a bit of a trade-off in that regard, in that in terms of exporting audio for loops, it only supports a range of 0.5 to 100. So if your loop speed is greater than 100, it'll export with no audio. And if the speed is less than 0.5, it'll also export with no audio. And that's just a limitation of the export software that I'm using. FFmpeg, I don't know if you've heard of it, but the app embeds an open source video clipping tool called FFmpeg, and that's how video export is done. And loops are saved as WebM files, which is basically the chosen video format of the web, which makes it easy to put up on your website or whatever. And I should note that ping pong loops take quite a bit of time to export, because not only does it have to encode the forward portion, it also has to reverse the loop and create a backward portion and then join those two together. So if you're wondering why ping pong loops take forever, that's why. And I'm getting towards the end of the video now. Other features, you might be wondering what this little slider is on the bottom, and this is the scrub tolerance slider. This mostly comes into play with very large files, and it basically determines like the increments or how smooth scrubbing is. On very large files, if you have a scrub tolerance of 0, you might run into performance problems where the hardware of your computer has a hard time keeping up with the scrubbing. So if I change this to 1 second, you may notice the scrubbing's not as smooth, but on very large files, that's what you want, because you don't necessarily want every single frame. So you might actually get smoother scrubbing by having a larger scrub tolerance with respect to large files. So that's what that's for. And the range is 0 to 1 second. Other features, you can hit Control-Command-S to save a screenshot. So say I want this frame for whatever reason, Control-Command-S, and it'll ask you where you want to save it. Of course, pretty straightforward. And I guess I'll mention, I think I mentioned this a little bit before, but the fast forward and rewind buttons, as I call them, their function is dependent on what you have selected. So if you don't have a loop selected, it behaves essentially exactly like QuickTime Player does, where if you hit the rewind button, it'll actually play the video in reverse up to 60 times speed. And when you hit the fast forward button, it will play the video forward up to 60 times speed. But when you have a loop selected, it sets the speed of the loop. So hitting the rewind button will set the speed, controls speeds below 0. So you can use the rewind button to get it down to 0.1 speed, and use the fast forward button to increase the speed up to as much as you have your slider set. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a little bit idiosyncratic, but it's an indie app. What do you expect? And it works. That's all that matters, right? It's functional, it's consistent. Once you understand it, it makes sense. I'm pretty much done with this thing. I don't plan to touch it much. I'm just giving it away for free for now. If it gets some traction and people actually start using it, I might think about monetizing it. But it's been on the store for a couple of weeks now, and I haven't been getting much organic traffic. I don't know how much interest there is in a tool like this. Again, I made it for myself. I will be using it as my default video player on my Mac. And as far as like what I plan to do, there's one more thing I want to add, and that is I want it to remember your settings on a individual file basis. So like, let's say I close this thing and then reopen it down the road. I want it to remember all the loops I created and the size of the player window and everything else. But other than that, that's pretty much all I plan to do with this thing, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for watching this video. It was nice to see you again. I hope to see you again soon. Bye.